Everything changed the moment this legal move came into the picture, because what looked like a clear path forward suddenly became uncertain. At first, it seemed like the transition after Charlie Kirk's passing was smooth and controlled. Erika Kirk stepped forward quickly, took charge, and began leading the public image, the messaging, and the direction of everything connected to his name. For many people, that made sense. She was close to him, she understood his work, and she acted fast when things could have easily fallen apart. But now, new reports are suggesting that something else was happening at the same time, quietly and carefully, and that changes how people are looking at everything. Behind the scenes, Charlie's parents may have been working on something much more powerful than public control.
The media covers him a lot,
While Erika was visible and active, they may have been focused on legal ownership. And that difference matters more than anything else. Because in situations like this, being seen as the leader is not the same as having the legal right to lead. One is about perception, and the other is about authority. And when those two don't match, that's when problems begin.
So
now the focus is on one key issue, and that is control of the name itself.
And my son's stuffed animals.
Charlie Kirk is not just a person anymore in this context. His name represents a full brand. It includes books, media content, merchandise, events, and a large audience. That name has value, and whoever owns the rights to it has control over everything connected to it. This is why the situation has become so serious so quickly.
I'm asking you a
because if
question,
the parents have taken steps to secure those rights, then they may hold the final say over how that name is used moving forward. When people first saw Erika step into leadership, there was very little pushback. Everything looked organized. She appeared confident, she communicated clearly, and she took on responsibility without delay. That created a sense of stability at a time when things could have easily become chaotic. But now, with this new information coming out, people are starting to question whether that control was complete or only temporary. The idea that two different processes were happening at the same time is what makes this situation so intense. On one side, there was public action. On the other side, there may have been legal preparation. One moved fast and was visible. The other moved quietly and took time.
Close enough
and
to
now
observe,
those two
far
paths are
enough to
crossing,
avoid
and
cameras,
that is where the
far enough
conflict
to
begins.
avoid being
If the
placed
parents
there.
have secured legal rights to Charlie's name, that changes everything. Because legal rights are what determine who can approve projects, who can release products, and who can earn money from the brand.
I have to say,
it's not about who speaks the loudest or who appears to be in charge. It's about who has the authority on paper. And if that authority is not with Erika, then her position becomes uncertain. This is not just a small disagreement. This is something that affects every part of the brand. Think about books, for example. If a book is released under Charlie's name, but the rights to that name are not clear, then serious questions come up. Who approved the book? Who gets the money from it? Was it even allowed to be published in the first place? These are not simple questions. They are questions that can lead to legal action and financial loss. One of the biggest points of attention right now is the posthumous book that was connected to Charlie's name. It had already gained a lot of attention. People were waiting for it. There were expectations around it. And then suddenly it was pulled back without a clear explanation. At the time, that seemed strange. But now, it may make more sense. If there was confusion about who had the legal right to publish it, then stopping the project could have been a necessary step. This suggests that the conflict may not be new. It may have been building behind the scenes for a while. Decisions may have already been affected by this uncertainty. And if that is true, then what we are seeing now is not the start of the issue, but the moment it became visible. The impact of the situation goes beyond just one person or one project. It affects the entire structure built around Charlie's name. Organizations connected to him, partnerships, and ongoing projects all depend on clear authority. When that authority is questioned, everything becomes unstable. People begin to hesitate. Decisions slow down, and trust becomes harder to maintain. At the same time, there is another powerful force shaping this situation, and that is public opinion. People are watching closely. They are asking questions. They are comparing both sides, and they are forming their own views. Some believe Erika did what was necessary and acted responsibly. Others believe the transition happened too quickly and without clear authorization. This divide is making the situation even more complex. Because now, it's not just about legal rights. It's also about trust and perception. Even if a legal decision is made, public opinion will still matter. And once people form strong opinions, it is very difficult to change them. Right now, both sides appear to have something important. Erika has visibility and control over day-to-day operations. She is active and present. The parents, on the other hand, may have legal leverage. And when those two types of power exist at the same time but do not align, conflict becomes unavoidable. This kind of situation does not resolve quickly. There are too many factors involved. There is money, influence, and a legacy that means different things to different people. That is why the tension continues to grow. because everyone knows that the outcome will have a lasting impact.
What he was grateful
Another
for.
important detail is how this situation could affect past actions. If legal ownership is challenged, then decisions that were already made could be reviewed. Projects that were completed could be questioned. Financial actions could be examined. This adds another layer of pressure, because it means the issue is not only about the future, but also about the past. As the situation continues to unfold, people are waiting for something clear.
Your legacy,
a statement,
as it
a legal
is
decision,
mine
or some
and
form
my
of
husband's.
confirmation that settles the question of control. But until that happens, everything remains uncertain. And in that uncertainty,
had a
every
little
small
late
development
blooming
becomes
period, I
important.
guess you could say. But
What makes this even more intense is the absence of Charlie's own voice.
It's been
He's
amazing.
at the center of all
you
of
see
this,
the energy.
yet he is not here to clarify anything.
Absolutely.
There is no direct statement that explains what he wanted. That leaves room for interpretation, and both sides can claim they are acting in line with his vision. This lack of clarity is one of the main reasons the situation is so difficult. Because without clear direction, every action is open to question, and every question adds to the pressure. At this point, there are two possible paths forward. One is a private agreement where both sides reach a settlement. The other is a full legal battle where everything becomes public. If it goes to court, details that were previously hidden could be revealed. That would bring even more attention and possibly change how people see the situation.
They're also looking
no matter
for
which path is taken, the outcome will shape the future of everything connected to Charlie's name. It will decide who has control, who makes decisions, and how the legacy is managed. Right now, the story is still developing. There is no final answer yet. But one thing is clear. This is not something small. It is a situation that involves power, control, and the future of a brand that continues to have influence even after its creator is gone. As more information comes out, people will continue to watch closely. Every move will be analyzed, every decision will be questioned, and the pressure will remain until there is a clear resolution. This is where things stand now. A situation that started as a smooth transition has turned into a complex conflict, a battle between public authority and legal rights. And until those two are aligned, the tension will not go away. The next step is what everyone is waiting for, because that step will not just decide who is in control, it will decide how the legacy moves forward and what it becomes in the future. As this situation continues to unfold, the focus is now shifting from what has already happened to what could happen next. Because at this stage, it is no longer just about understanding the conflict, it is about predicting the outcome. And that is where things become even more uncertain. Because when legal rights, public leadership, and financial interests all collide, the result is rarely simple. One important factor that people are starting to pay attention to is timing. Timing plays a huge role in situations like this. Erika moved quickly and established control early. That gave her a strong position in the public eye. But legal processes often take more time. They are slower, more detailed, and more structured. If Charlie's parents started their legal steps early, even if it was not visible, that could mean they were building a foundation that is only now becoming clear. This creates a situation where one side may appear ahead, while the other may actually hold stronger long-term power. And that difference is what makes everything so unpredictable. Because what people see on the surface is not always what determines the final outcome. Another key issue is how decisions are being made right now. Because even while this conflict is ongoing, the brand connected to Charlie's name is still active. Content may still be created. Plans may still be in motion. But if there is uncertainty about who has the authority to approve those actions, then every decision carries risk. And that risk grows over time. For example, imagine a new project being launched under Charlie's name while the legal rights are still being questioned. If later it is decided that the approval was not valid, that project could face serious consequences. It could be challenged, delayed, or even removed completely. This is why situations like this often lead to hesitation. People become careful. They wait. They avoid making moves until things become clear. But waiting also has its own cost. Because when a brand stops moving forward, it can lose momentum.
That's normal.
Audiences may lose interest. Opportunities may pass. And that creates pressure to keep going, even in uncertain conditions.
You don't even know my position.
This balance between moving forward and staying cautious is one of the biggest challenges in a situation like this. At the same time, the role of public reaction continues to grow. People are not just watching passively. They are discussing, debating, and forming strong opinions. And those opinions can influence how the situation develops. because public support can strengthen one side, while criticism can weaken the other. This is especially important in a case like this, where the audience is already used to questioning things. They are not simply accepting what they are told. They are looking at details, timelines, and actions. And that creates a level of pressure that goes beyond the legal side of the issue.
But your goal
Another layer to this is the emotional aspect. Even though this situation is now focused on legal and business matters, it still began with a personal loss. And emotions can still influence decisions. Different people may feel strongly about what is right or fair, and those feelings can shape how each side acts. But when emotions mix with legal and financial matters, things can become even more complicated, because decisions need to be based on rules and facts, not just feelings. And balancing those two sides is never easy. As the story continues, one possible outcome is that both sides reach some kind of agreement. This would involve discussions, compromises, and a clear plan for how to move forward. In many cases, this is the preferred option because it avoids a long and public legal battle. It allows both sides to have some level of control and reduces uncertainty.
And then number two,
however,
I think it would be
reaching that kind of agreement is not always simple. Both sides need to be willing to compromise. And when there is a lot at stake, that can be difficult, because each side believes they have a valid claim and a strong position. If an agreement is not reached, then the situation could move into a full legal dispute. And that is where everything becomes more serious. Legal cases take time. They require evidence, arguments, and formal decisions. And during that time, uncertainty continues. In a legal case, the focus would be on facts. Documents, agreements, and legal filings would be examined closely. The question would not be about who acted first or who appeared to be in control. It would be about who has the legal right according to the law. This process can also bring new information to light. Details that were not known before could become public. And that could change how people understand the situation. It could also affect public opinion, depending on what is revealed. While all of this is happening, the future of the brand remains uncertain. Decisions about content, partnerships, and projects may be delayed or changed. And that affects not only the people directly involved, but also everyone connected to the brand. Another important question is how this situation will shape the legacy moving forward. Because beyond the legal and business aspects, there is also the issue of how Charlie's work and message will be remembered. Different outcomes could lead to different directions. If Erika maintains control, the current approach may continue. If the parents gain legal authority, there could be changes in how things are managed. And each of these paths could lead to a different future for the brand. This is why the stakes are so high. Because this is not just about control in the present, it is about the long-term direction and meaning of everything that was built. At the same time, there is still no clear answer. The situation is ongoing, reports are still developing, and nothing has been finalized. That means that any new information could shift the balance quickly. People are watching closely because they understand that this is a turning point. The decisions made in this period will have lasting effects, and once those decisions are made, it may not be easy to change them. As things move forward, communication will also play a key role. Statements from those involved, updates about legal actions, and public responses can all influence how the situation is perceived. Clear and consistent communication can help reduce confusion, while a lack of clarity can increase speculation. Right now, there is still a lot of speculation. People are trying to connect different pieces of information. They are forming theories. And until there is something official, that speculation will continue. This creates an environment where every small detail becomes important. A delay, a statement, or even silence can be interpreted in different ways. And that keeps the situation active in public discussion. In the end, what happens next will depend on a combination of factors. Legal decisions, personal choices, and public reaction will all play a role. And because there are so many moving parts, predicting the exact outcome is very difficult. What is clear is that this is not a situation that will resolve quietly or quickly. It involves too many important elements. And until there is a clear decision about control, the tension will remain. This is where the story stands now, a complex situation with no final answer yet, but with significant consequences ahead. And as each new development comes in, it will bring the situation one step closer to a resolution that will define everything moving forward. As more time passes, the situation is no longer just developing quietly. It is starting to reach a point where decisions cannot be delayed much longer. Because when control, money, and public attention are all involved at this level, pressure builds quickly, and that pressure forces action. Right now, one of the biggest questions is how long both sides can continue like this without a clear resolution. Because uncertainty can only last for so long before it starts to create real damage. Not just in terms of legal risk, but also in terms of trust,
Are you worried?
reputation,
One question,
and long-term
and then we'll go
stability.
You would love it.
Think about it carefully.
There is something
Every
about
day that
Erika
passes
Kirk
without clarity
that
is
is
another day where people
deeply
connected to the brand are unsure. Partners may hesitate before making commitments. Supporters may begin to question what is really happening. And internally, decision-making becomes more difficult because no one wants to take a step that could later be challenged. This kind of environment is not sustainable for long. At some point, something has to give. Either there will be a clear agreement or there will be a stronger legal move that pushes the situation in one direction. Another important factor is how each side is likely preparing for what comes next. Because even if nothing major has been announced publicly yet, it is very likely that both sides are planning their next steps carefully. Legal teams, advisors, and close supporters may all be involved behind the scenes, working through different possibilities. For Erika, the focus may be on maintaining stability and continuing operations as smoothly as possible. Staying active, visible, and consistent helps reinforce her position. Because as long as she continues to lead publicly, it strengthens the perception that she is in control. On the other side, if the parents are building a legal case, their focus may be on documentation, rights, and formal authority. Their strength would come from what can be proven legally, not from public appearances. And that means their moves may continue to be quieter, but more structured. This difference in approach creates a very interesting dynamic. One side is visible and active. The other may be quiet, but building legal strength. And when those two approaches finally meet directly, that is when the situation could change very quickly.
So you don't miss out on any
Another
future
key area to watch is how future projects are handled, because projects often reveal where the real control lies.
She was
If new
backed into a
content
corner
continues
by
to be released without interruption, it may
views,
suggest that
and
operational
eventually,
control is still strong.
Into a
But if
microphone
projects
at a public
start to slow
event,
down,
you sat
get
in the
delayed,
House chamber
or
as the
face
president's
issues,
personal
that
guest.
could be a sign that the legal uncertainty is having a real impact. The same goes for partnerships and collaborations. These often depend on clear agreements and trust. If partners feel uncertain about who has the authority to
Close enough to
deals,
observe,
they
far
may
enough
choose
to
to wait.
avoid cameras,
And that
far enough
hesitation
to
can
avoid
slow
being
down
placed
growth
there.
and reduce
has
opportunity.
always existed.
There is
and it
also the
always
question
will.
of how this situation affects the people working within the organization.
Is my husband.
Because beyond the public figures, there are teams, staff members, and
And to the
contributors who
Trademark
rely on
USA
stability.
chapters that are watching
Uncertainty at the top can create
all
stress
across
and
America
confusion at every level,
as time goes
and that
on,
can
because
affect how
there's just a
effectively
void
the
that apparently
organization
needs to be
operates.
filled. I'm okay.
As all of this continues,
And high
public
res.
attention remains strong. People
The
are still
video of
watching
my
closely,
husband
discussing
being
every
murdered
update and trying to
behind the
understand what
camera,
is
in
really
front of the
happening.
camera, from
And in many
being a
ways,
model and
that
actress,
attention adds
host.
even more pressure to
I've
resolve the
been part of the
situation.
inaugural
Because
episode
when
for
something is
Forever
being
Seeking.
watched this closely,
Today I am
it becomes
joined by
harder
one
to
of my
keep things
favorite
private.
community.
Even
Let's
small
meet at Bill's
developments can
Burgers.
become widely
Mind you, I've
discussed,
lived in Manhattan
and that
now
makes
for
it more
about
difficult for either
5
side to move
years.
quietly.
Favorite
At the same time,
eye
the longer this
doctor.
situation continues without resolution,
Yes, you are
the
my
more
only
it
eye
risks
doctor.
shaping the overall
Your
narrative.
legacy,
Because
as
people
it
begin to
is
form lasting
mine
opinions.
and my
And once
husband's.
those opinions are set,
And
they can influence how the outcome is received, no matter what the legal decision is. For example, if one side is seen as more transparent or more consistent, that may earn them more public support.
I absolutely
On the other hand, if one side is seen as unclear or
mostly
inactive,
because
that could
it
weaken
has
their
that-
position in
It's
the
just
eyes
so
of the audience.
cathartic to be able
This
to
is why
just
communication
write
remains so
out what he
important.
was grateful
Clear,
for.
simple, and
You know,
consistent
even
updates
just-
can help manage perception. But if communication is limited or confusing, it can lead to more speculation and misunderstanding. Looking ahead, there are a few possible turning points that could change everything. A formal legal filing becoming public could shift the balance. A clear statement from either side could influence public opinion. Or a decision about a major project could reveal who truly has control. Any one of these developments could act as a trigger, moving the situation from uncertainty to a more defined direction. And once that happens, things may start to move much faster. It is also important to consider the long-term impact of how this is handled. Because even after the situation is resolved, the way it was handled will be remembered. It will affect trust, relationships, and how the legacy is viewed in the future.
You're my best friend.
If the situation is resolved in a way that appears fair and
It's just
clear,
so
it may
cathartic
help
to be able to
rebuild
just
stability.
write out
But
what
if it
he was
becomes a
grateful
long
for.
and public conflict,
You know,
it
even
could leave
just-
lasting effects that are harder to overcome. At the center of all of this remains the same core issue: control of a name that
Anyways,
represents more than just a
everyone,
person. It represents work,
does their best to
influence,
pour
and a
into
large
He's
platform.
like, gosh, we
And
need
that
to
is why the
increase the
stakes remain so
conservative
high.
footprint
As
in
things
Nevada.
continue to
I'm so
develop, the
grateful
focus
to
will
have
remain on one key outcome: who has the final authority? Because once that question is answered, many of the other
This has
issues will
always
begin to fall into
existed, and it
place.
always will.
Until then,
That-
the situation remains in a
That would be
state of
good
tension,
leaders, good
active,
husbands,
uncertain,
good
and
fathers
closely
like
watched.
mine.
Every move matters.
She was backed
Every
into a
decision
corner
carries
by
weight,
159
and every new piece of
million
information
views.
has the
And
potential to
eventually,
change everything.
something
This is where the story continues, not at the end, but at a critical point where the next steps will define the direction forward.
Into a microphone
and as
at a
those steps
public
unfold,
event, you
the full
sat in the
impact
House
of the
chamber as the
situation
president's
will become
personal
clear.
guest.